Welcome to Starbound Valor HFY. Subscribe now and dive into daily epic sci-fi adventures where humanity always rises. In the far darkness beyond the known stars, something moved. It was small at first, just a flicker on the Galactic Council's deep space scanners. The technicians thought it was a glitch, maybe a drifting rock or a lost satellite. But then the flicker became a line, steady, bright, and moving faster than anything they had ever seen. It was traveling from the edge of the galaxy, cutting through empty space like a blade through water. The Council's scientists gathered in silence, staring at the growing signal. It wasn't natural. It wasn't alien technology they knew. It was something new, something impossible. The news spread quickly across the galaxy. On the Council's capital world, hundreds of diplomats from 1,000 species filled the Grand Chamber. The air was thick with tension and fear. The last time an unknown object entered Council space, it had been a pirate armada, but this was different. This was a single ship moving faster than any known drive could go. The scans showed a strange shape, sharp, angular, built for war. The hull was black, absorbing light instead of reflecting it. And across its side were markings in a language no translator could understand. The closest translation came from ancient data archives, the word UNSC Vengeance. The Council's Admiral Serix, a cold and careful strategist, leaned forward. "Has it responded to hails?" he asked. The technician shook his head. "No communication, sir. It ignores all signals." The Admiral's scaled hand tapped the table. "Send a probe. I want full data." The probe was launched within minutes, racing toward the dark ship with its sensors wide open. But before it could scan, before it could even send one complete image, it vanished. One instant it was there, the next, nothing but static. The chamber fell silent. The Council members looked at each other in disbelief. "Was it destroyed?" one asked. "Impossible," said another. "It must be a power surge or interference." But Admiral Serix knew better. The signal hadn't faded, it had been erased. Something powerful had wiped it out, completely. He turned to the holodisplay showing the warship. It was now slowing down, coming to a full stop near the edge of a neutral system. Slowly, a soft glow appeared around it, shields, or maybe weapons charging. "Is it preparing to attack?" someone whispered. Panic spread like fire. Some worlds began to evaluate their border colonies. Merchant fleets changed routes to avoid that region. The Council called for an emergency meeting, but no one had answers. Who were these humans? Why had no one ever heard of them? Some believed it was a lost empire from another galaxy. Others said it was an AI creation, something left behind by an extinct race. But all agreed on one thing: whatever it wasn't afraid. Days passed, and the dark warship stayed silent. Scouts kept their distance, afraid to provoke it. Then, without warning, the ship moved again. It changed course and began heading toward the core worlds, straight toward the heart of the Council's power. Every monitoring station went on high alert. Fleets scrambled to form a blockade, but the warship didn't stop. It moved with calm, unstoppable precision, as if it already knew every defense they had. Its engines burned blue, leaving trails of light like ghost fire across the void. Inside the command room of the Council, voices shouted over one another. "We must destroy it." "No. We don't even know what it wants." "It erased a probe." "That is an act of war." Admiral Serix raised a hand, his tone firm. "Enough. We will not attack first. If this vessel wanted war, we would already be dead." The room went quiet. Even the boldest among them had to admit he was right. The ship had passed through defense grids, minefields, and sensor traps without firing once. It could have crushed them all, but it didn't. It was watching. Hours later, something unexpected happened. The warship stopped again, this time near a communication relay. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, the signal came. One short burst of energy, then audio. The voice that followed was deep, calm, and filled with quiet power. This is the United Nations Space Command. We come in peace. Identify yourselves. The council chamber froze. The translation systems replayed the message over and over. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a warning. It was a greeting, but one that carried weight. The words sounded human. The council scrambled to respond. They tried to speak in trade language, and binary, and symbols, but there was no reply. Only silence. Then, another signal came, an image. It was a picture of Earth. Blue oceans, green land, white clouds. Underneath were the words, "We are humanity." The hall erupted in confusion. Humanity? That world was destroyed thousands of years ago. Impossible. The humans vanished before our kind even reached the stars. Then what are we seeing now? Admiral Sarek stared at the glowing image. Deep inside, a chill ran through him. He had read the old legends, the species that burned their own world in war, yet survived. The species that refused to bow, even to extinction. If this was truly humanity, then the galaxy was about to change forever. He leaned forward, his voice low and heavy. Prepare the fleets. We may be facing the return of something the galaxy thought was gone. Out in the void, the human warship drifted silently, its hull reflecting the distant starlight. Inside, unseen eyes watched the galaxy's reactions. Somewhere deep within the ship, a voice spoke softly, "They're afraid." Another voice answered, calm and certain, "Good. Then they'll listen." And as the stars shimmered, the galaxy realized it had just witnessed something no one had seen before, the arrival of a human warship. And from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same again. The great chamber of the Galactic Council was never silent, yet on that day, a heavy stillness filled the air. Hundreds of species sat across the white tiers of the assembly hall, their eyes fixed on the main hologram showing the human warship. The image rotated slowly, displaying its dark metallic surface, its strange angular design, and the bold words painted across its hull, UNSC Vengeance. No one spoke for a long time. The last transmission from the ship still echoed in every mind, "We are humanity." The word itself carried weight. It was a name out of myth, a name buried in ancient galactic archives. Most had believed humans were long extinct, wiped out by their own wars before they had even left their solar system. But now, the impossible had happened. They were back, and they had come in a warship. At last, Council Leader Taver broke the silence. We all saw the signal. We all heard their message. What we must decide now is whether they are friend or foe. A wave of uneasy murmurs spread through the room. The representative of the Varkal Empire, a tall reptilian being with crimson scales, slammed his clawed hand on the table. "Foe! That ship destroyed our probe without warning. You call that peace?" His voice hissed with anger. A softer, echoing tone came from the luminous being beside him, a member of the Thalrai Union. "Maybe the probe crossed a border we didn't see. Maybe it was a mistake." The Varkal turned his gaze sharply. "A mistake? It erased the probe in less than a second. Only weapons of war can do that." Admiral Sarek, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. His calm voice cut through the noise. "Enough. We are not dealing with pirates or scavengers. This ship, it moves with purpose. It doesn't attack without reason. It has the power to destroy us all, but it hasn't. That alone should make you think." His words brought quiet for a moment. But then another representative, a sharp-faced creature from the Vinari Trade Guild, hissed, "Perhaps they're studying us first. Like hunters studying prey before the strike." Sarek frowned but didn't argue. The truth was, no one knew the humans' intentions. The council ordered the formation of an investigative team. Scientists, military officers, and diplomats gathered to study every signal and transmission. The more they analyzed, the stranger it became. The humans' technology didn't match any known design. Their engines broke every rule of physics the council understood. Their weapons emitted energy signatures that no sensor could fully decode. It was as if the humans had discovered secrets far beyond galactic science, or something entirely new. The fear deepened. Meanwhile, outside the chamber, the galaxy was already reacting. News networks across hundreds of systems showed the image of the human warship again and again. Civilian populations panicked. Some worlds declared emergency states. Merchants refused to travel near human coordinates. Children in distant colonies asked their parents if the humans were monsters. The name UNSC Vengeance became the most feared and most whispered term in the stars. And yet, in hidden corners, not everyone was afraid. There were those who lived under the Council's rule, worlds that had suffered under heavy taxes and control. To them, this mysterious human ship represented something else: hope. A force strong enough to challenge the Council's power. Back in the Great Chamber, the debates turned into shouting. They must be contained. We must contact them again. What if they are an advance scout for a larger fleet? And what if they are alone? Each word carried fear and desperation. Finally, Council Leader Taver raised his voice. We cannot wait. The galaxy must see that we are not weak. He looked toward Admiral Serix. Admiral, assemble a fleet. 100 ships. You will intercept the human warship and demand its surrender. Serix's eyes narrowed. He wanted more time to think, to study, but he could see the decision was already made. The Council wanted to show strength, even if it meant risking everything. He nodded slowly. As you command. When he left the chamber, he glanced one last time at the hologram of the UNSC Vengeance. Its shape was sharp and still, like a predator waiting in the dark. Deep inside, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: uncertainty. Across the stars, the fleet prepared. Battleships, cruisers, and scouts gathered in formation. It was called the First Contact Fleet. Their mission: to intercept, to question, and, if needed, to destroy the human warship. As they approached the coordinates, silence filled their comms. The human vessel hung motionless among the stars, its dark surface reflecting the distant light of a dying sun. Admiral Serix, aboard the flagship Valor's Reach, gave the order. Send a message. Across the void, a signal was transmitted. Unknown vessel, this is the Galactic Council fleet. You are trespassing in restricted space. Identify yourself and state your purpose. There was no answer. Seconds stretched into minutes. Then another officer spoke nervously. No response, sir. The fleet repeated the message, changing frequencies, switching to old codes, but still, no reply came. The tension grew. One captain whispered over the private line, maybe their systems are damaged. Another said, or maybe they're ignoring us. Without warning, a nervous Varkle commander, sitting on the far edge of the formation, panicked. They're charging weapons, he shouted. His sensors flickered, and before anyone could verify it, he fired. A single beam of plasma shot across space and struck the Vengeance. The light flared, and then disappeared. No damage. No reaction. It was as if the human ship had simply swallowed the attack. Silence filled the comms. Then, suddenly, a deep blue light ignited along the side of the Vengeance. Admiral Serix shouted, hold fire. Do not, but it was too late. The Vengeance moved. One shot. A thin beam of blue energy flashed out and passed through 10 ships at once. The fleet fell into chaos. Ships exploded in silence, their wreckage drifting into the void. Serix's heart pounded as he watched the impossible. The Vengeance stopped moving again, floating calmly as if nothing had happened. Then, a voice came through every channel, clear and cold: we come in peace, unless you come in war. The signal cut. Serix stood frozen. Around him, officers whispered in disbelief. The Council had tried to show strength, and failed. The galaxy had just witnessed the power of humanity, and Serix knew one thing for certain: this was only the beginning. The wreckage of the First Contact Fleet drifted silently across the stars, glowing faintly under the distant light of a dying sun. Shattered hulls, broken engines, and drifting debris told the story of what had just happened: 100 ships against one, and only one had survived untouched. The UNSC Vengeance floated calmly among the ruins, its dark surface reflecting nothing, its presence heavy and still. No fires burned within it, no signals leaked out. It was as if the ship itself was watching, waiting for what the galaxy would do next. Across the Council's communication networks, chaos spread like wildfire. Thousands of live feeds replayed the same horrifying footage, a single human being cutting through 10 warships as easily as slicing air. Every world, every race, every citizen had seen it. Some called it an act of war. Others whispered it was divine punishment. But for most, it was simple terror, pure and cold. In the Galactic Council's capital, the emergency chamber filled once again. The air was thick with fear, voices overlapping in panic. "They destroyed an entire fleet," shouted the Varkal representative, his scales glowing red with rage. "This is war." Another voice, trembling but loud, said, "War? With what?" "They erased 100 of our best ships in less than a minute." The leader of the Thalrai Union spoke softly, "Maybe we provoked them. We fired first." "That doesn't matter," the Varkal roared. "They didn't just defend, they annihilated." The shouting grew louder, the chamber a storm of fear and anger. In the center of it all, Admiral Sarek stood in silence, his mind spinning. He had watched the battle from his flagship until the moment his ship lost power and communications. He had seen the blue beam tear through ships as if armor and shields didn't exist. And when it was over, he had heard that calm, chilling voice, "We come in peace, unless you come in war." Finally, he spoke. His voice carried through the chaos like a steady current. "They could have destroyed us all," he said. "But they didn't." The room went quiet. "They fired one shot. Just one. Enough to stop the fight, not end us. That was not war, it was a warning." Council Leader Taver looked at him sharply. "A warning?" Sarek nodded slowly. "Yes. They wanted to make a point. To show us their strength, so we'd think twice before attacking again." The silence that followed was heavy with realization. "And if we don't listen?" asked a voice from the back. Sarek met their gaze. "Then the next time, they won't stop at one shot." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the UNSC Vengeance continued its silent journey. Deep within its command bridge, Commander Reyes stood before a large tactical screen, watching the alien distress signals scatter across space. Around him, the human crew worked with calm precision, their faces illuminated by the cool blue light of the consoles. "Status?" Reyes asked quietly. "Minor power use on the forward cannon," replied Lieutenant Harris. "No return fire detected. Enemy fleet destroyed or retreating." Reyes nodded. "Damage reports?" "None, sir." A moment of silence passed before Reyes spoke again. "Then they've had their lesson. Let's see how they react." His second officer, a woman with sharp eyes named Captain Lien, turned to him. "They'll see us as monsters now." Reyes gave a faint smile. "Let them. Monsters are remembered." Back in the council, fear had turned into argument. Some demanded revenge. Others begged for peace. And yet others suggested hiding, moving fleets away, sealing borders, pretending humanity didn't exist. But that wasn't possible anymore. The footage of the battle had spread to every corner of the galaxy. On countless worlds, people had seen the human warship's power. For the first time in centuries, the mighty council was afraid of something it didn't control. Rumors began to spread faster than light. Some said the humans came from a dead world that had rebuilt itself in secret. Others believed they were machines, an ancient AI civilization reborn. A few even said they were demons from another dimension, sent to punish arrogance. No one knew the truth, but everyone agreed on one thing: the galaxy had changed. In private chambers, Admiral Sarek met with Council Leader Taver once more. The leader's usual calm face was now hard and pale. "You were there," he said quietly. You saw it. What do you think they want? Syrinx took a long breath. They want us to understand their message. They said they come in peace. But they also said, unless you come in war. They don't want to conquer us. They want to warn us. Taver frowned. Warn us of what? Syrinx's gaze darkened. Of themselves. The leader was silent for a long time before speaking again. So what do you propose? Contact them again, Syrinx said firmly. Not with weapons. With words. Taver shook his head. After what happened, no one will agree to that. They will demand blood. Syrinx looked out the window at the stars. Then they'll get extinction instead. Far from the Council worlds, on a small moon used as a listening post, a young alien technician named Kale monitored deep space transmissions. For hours, the sensors had picked up nothing but static and debris echoes from the destroyed fleet. Then suddenly, his console lit up. A signal, simple, powerful, encrypted in a language unknown to him. He ran it through the translator. The message was short, only 3 words, "We are waiting." Kale froze, staring at the glowing text. He whispered to himself, "They're not done." He tried to send it to the Council, but the signal vanished before he could transmit. It was as if the humans had spoken directly to him, and then disappeared. As news of the destroyed fleet reached the outer colonies, entire civilizations began preparing for the worst. Armies mobilized. Fleets assembled. But among the common people, whispers grew louder. Stories of humanity spread, of a species that had once destroyed its own world but survived, that fought not for conquest, but for survival, that now returned with power beyond understanding. The galaxy's rulers feared them, but the oppressed saw something different, a spark of hope. Maybe the humans would bring change. Maybe the old empires would finally fall. Back on the UNSC Vengeance, Commander Reyes stood before the viewport, watching the stars drift past. "They'll come again," Captain Lien said quietly. Reyes nodded. "Yes. And next time, it won't be words that decide it. It will be history." He turned to his crew, his expression calm but fierce. "Prepare the ship. If they want to understand humanity, then they'll see what we've learned from our own wars." Outside, the stars gleamed cold and distant, unaware that a storm was forming. For the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy had seen true power, and the name of humanity had returned to the stars. The destruction of the first contact fleet shook the galaxy to its core. No one had ever seen such power, so fast, so absolute, and so precise. 100 ships, gone in seconds, and yet the human warship had not moved to attack again. It drifted silently, like a shadow among the stars, its dark hull absorbing the light as if it belonged to the void itself. The Galactic Council tried to hide the truth, but it was too late. The footage of the battle had already escaped their control. Every world, every colony, every outpost across the spiral arms had seen it. The sight of that single beam cutting through the fleet replayed endlessly across the galaxy's networks. For the first time in living memory, the Great Council's power was questioned. People began whispering a single name, humanity. On the Council capital, panic turned to chaos. Riots erupted in some districts as citizens demanded to know if the humans would attack again. Merchants refused to send shipments near the border systems. Governors of outlying worlds sent frantic messages to recall their defense fleets. In the Great Assembly Hall, Council leader Taver tried to calm the storm. "We must not let fear rule us," he said, but his voice was drowned out by the noise. Some members demanded immediate war. Others wanted peace talks. Others still wanted to pretend it never happened. The galaxy was splitting apart under fear. Admiral Syrinx stood alone near the edge of the chamber, watching the chaos unfold. His eyes were cold, his thoughts heavy. He had seen the human warships attack with his own eyes. He knew what it was capable of. But what disturbed him most was not the destruction, it was the precision. The humans had fired only once. They could have destroyed every ship in the fleet, but they didn't. That meant something. It meant control. It meant purpose. They weren't showing power, Syrinx thought quietly. They were showing restraint. But no one wanted to listen. Across the stars, the reaction varied from fear to fascination. On the world of Thaler Prime, news anchors called the humans the ghosts of old Earth. On mining colonies near the Outer Rim, workers gathered in bars, speaking in hushed voices. If they could wipe out the Council fleet, maybe they could end the wars, one said. Or maybe they'll end everything, another replied. On one poor, forgotten world, a young alien girl looked at the image of the human ship and whispered, "They look strong." Her father frowned. "Strong things are dangerous." The girl didn't answer. She just kept staring at the stars. Meanwhile, deep inside the Council's military command, leaders gathered for an emergency session. Admiral Syrinx stood at the center of the holotable, surrounded by generals and strategists. "We cannot underestimate them," he said. "Their ship's technology exceeds anything we've seen. We don't even understand how their weapons work." One general growled, "We'll find out soon enough. We just need to capture one of their vessels." Syrinx turned toward him sharply. "Capture it? We couldn't even touch it. The Vengeance shrugged off everything we threw at it." The general slammed his fist on the table. "Then we build stronger weapons." "Against what?" Syrinx demanded. "A ship that defies physics itself?" The room fell silent. Everyone knew he was right. In another corner of the galaxy, secret transmissions began to flow. Not everyone wanted war. Some species had lived under the Council's control for too long. They saw the human ship as a sign, an opportunity. Underground resistance groups began sending hidden signals toward human space, hoping someone was listening. One such message was intercepted by the Council's intelligence network. The words were short but chilling, "We wish to meet. We are not your enemies." The Council tried to trace the signal's origin, but it vanished into the void. Inside the human warship, Commander Reyes stood at the command center, studying a cluster of incoming transmissions. "They're watching us," said Captain Lien, scanning the feeds. "Every major network is broadcasting our image. They're afraid." Reyes nodded slowly. "Fear spreads faster than light." He paused, then added, "But fear can be useful. They'll think twice before they point another gun at us." The ship's AI, a calm female voice named Iris, spoke through the speakers. "Commander, multiple encrypted transmissions detected. Several appear to be requests for contact." Reyes looked up. "From who?" "Unknown sources. Possibly Council citizens. Possibly resistance groups." Reyes smirked slightly. "So the cracks are forming." Back in the Council chamber, the debates grew darker. Council leader Taver stood before the assembly, his voice trembling slightly. "We must protect our worlds. The humans have made their intentions clear." But Admiral Syrinx interrupted, his voice cold but steady. "No, they haven't. They said, 'We come in peace, unless you come in war.' It's a warning, not a declaration." The Varkle representative snarled, "You defend them, Admiral?" "No," Syrinx replied. "I'm trying to understand them. If we mistake their restraint for weakness, we will not survive the next encounter." The chamber fell into tense silence. Outside, fleets began to mobilize again, not to attack, but to prepare. Defense lines were drawn across border systems. Every planet in the intersectors was placed on alert. Propaganda filled the airwaves, painting the humans as demons, as ancient killers reborn from the ashes of a dead world. But not everyone believed it. In hidden corners, people whispered that maybe humanity was not the monster, they were simply the mirror showing what the galaxy had become. On one world, a historian named Dreamcore studied the ancient archives of pre-Council civilizations. There, buried under centuries of forgotten data, he found something shocking: records of an ancient encounter with a species matching the human description. The documents spoke of wars, of resilience, of a species that refused to die even when their world burned. They were not conquerors. They were survivors. Dream stared at the files in awe and fear. They warned us once, he whispered. And we forgot. As the galaxy trembled under fear and confusion, the UNSC Vengeance continued its silent journey. It did not speak, it did not fire, it did not threaten. It simply moved with calm, patient, unstoppable. To the Council, it was a nightmare. To the oppressed, it was a symbol. To Admiral Serix, it was a mystery he couldn't ignore. He stood before his window, watching the stars, and whispered to himself, "What are you planning, humans?" Far away, deep within the human ship, Commander Reyes looked out at the same stars. "They're reacting just as we expected," he said quietly. "Good. Let them talk. Let them fear. The more they fear, the less they'll fight." Captain Lien glanced at him. "And if they still choose war?" Reyes smiled faintly. "Then we'll remind them what war really means." The stars outside shone brighter, cold and distant, as the galaxy held its breath. The humans had not fired again, but everyone knew it was only a matter of time before the next move was made. In the weeks that followed the destruction of the First Contact Fleet, the galaxy was drowning in fear and rumor. The word humanity had spread across 1,000 worlds like wildfire. Every major network debated who the humans were, where they came from, and what they wanted. The Galactic Council released statement after statement, but the more they spoke, the less people believed them. The image of the dark human warship, the UNSC Vengeance, lingered in everyone's mind. It was a ghost, a weapon, a mystery. And behind that mystery lay a question that no one could answer: what kind of world had created such power? Among those who wanted to know the truth was an alien journalist named Karen Soul. He worked for a small, independent news network that specialized in investigating Council secrets. To most, Karen was a fool. To some, he was brave. But to himself, he was simply curious. He had watched the recordings of the battle 100 times, studying every detail of the human warship. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a message. He felt it in his bones. The humans weren't conquerors. They were something else. Something older. Something that had learned to survive the hard way. So Karen made a choice that most would call madness: he would go to Earth. No one in the galaxy even knew if Earth still existed. The Council claimed it was a dead planet, burned by ancient wars and toxic air. But the Vengeance had sent an image of a blue world, green lands, white clouds, oceans of deep color. If that was Earth, then everything the Council had said was a lie. Using false credentials and an old scout ship, Karen left the safety of the Council's core worlds and began his journey toward the Sol System, the birthplace of humanity. The trip took weeks. The closer he got, the quieter the stars became. There were no trade routes, no outposts, no signs of civilization. Space felt empty, but not dead, just watched. His ship's sensors occasionally picked up faint energy signatures, but when he turned to look, there was nothing there. On the 6th day, his communications suddenly cut off. All frequencies went silent, as if something was jamming him. Karen felt his pulse quicken. "If you're out there," he whispered into the dark, "I'm not here to fight." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, without warning, his console flickered, and a single message appeared on his screen: "Follow the signal." His ship adjusted course automatically, moving through a field of broken satellites and drifting debris. Ahead, a faint blue glow appeared. And then, suddenly, Earth filled his viewport. It was beautiful. Not the dead wasteland the Council had described, but a living world covered in blue oceans and green continents. Vast cities glittered across the night side like constellations. Space stations orbited high above, sleek and metallic. Defense grids and patrol ships drifted silently, watching everything that approached. Karen could only stare. "They rebuilt," he whispered in disbelief. "After everything, they rebuilt." Before he could even breathe, a voice filled his cockpit. It was calm, human, and precise. "Unidentified vessel, you are entering restricted space. State your name and purpose." Karen's voice trembled. "My name is Karen Soul. I'm not part of the Council fleet." I seek information, truth about humanity. There was a long pause. Then the voice replied, "Prepare for escort." Moments later, 2 sleek fighter ships appeared beside him. They didn't threaten or attack. They simply guided him down through the clouds. When Karen stepped onto Earth's surface, he was overwhelmed. The air was clean. The cities were vast but not chaotic, towers of metal and glass standing side by side with green parks and quiet streets. Humans walked among machines that looked almost alive. He expected soldiers and weapons everywhere, but instead, he saw families, children, laughter. The people were strong, but not cruel. He met a human officer who introduced himself as Captain Rourke. "You came from the Council," Rourke said. "Few have done that and lived." Karen nodded nervously. "I came to learn the truth. The galaxy fears you. They think you will destroy them." Rourke studied him for a long moment before answering. "We've destroyed enough of our own. We don't want war. But we won't kneel again. Not to anyone." Over the next several days, Karen was shown what the galaxy had never seen. He walked through memorial halls filled with names of humans who had died in wars long ago, wars that nearly ended their species. He saw recordings of their cities burning, their oceans poisoned, their skies turned red. And yet, he also saw how they had rebuilt. Every scar on their planet had become a lesson. Every failure had become strength. They had united under one banner, not for conquest, but for survival. "We learned," said one historian, "that peace without strength is slavery. We will never let it happen again." Karen realized something incredible. Humanity did not build the vengeance to conquer the galaxy, it was a guardian, a shield. They had seen what the galaxy could do to itself. They had seen empires rise and crush the weak. They built the warship not because they loved war, but because they hated it and wanted to make sure it never came to them again. "We don't start wars," one commander told him quietly, "but we finish them." Before Karen left, he stood on a high balcony overlooking Earth's vast blue horizon. Captain Rourke joined him. "You'll tell them what you saw?" he asked. Karen nodded. "I'll tell them the truth." Rourke's gaze hardened slightly. "Be careful. The Council doesn't like the truth." Karen smiled faintly. "Neither do most people." When Karen's ship departed Earth's orbit, he transmitted his story across the galactic networks. He described the real humanity, a world scarred but alive, strong but peaceful. He spoke of a people who had known suffering greater than any other, and who now stood united not out of greed, but out of survival. His report spread faster than the Council could suppress it. Billions heard his words. Many refused to believe. But some, especially those living under oppression, saw hope in every line. The next day, Karen vanished. His ship was found adrift near the edge of Council space, systems fried, memory core empty. Officially, the Council claimed it was a navigation accident. But across the galaxy, whispers spread that the humans had saved him or silenced him to protect their secrets. No one truly knew. But one thing was certain, the galaxy had now seen the truth about Earth, and nothing could erase it. Humanity was not a myth. They were real, they were watching, and they were ready. And in the dark halls of the Council, fear turned into something far more dangerous, desperation. The Galactic Council chambers had never felt this heavy with silence. Normally, the air would hum with the chatter of diplomats, the arguments of species from 100 worlds, and the constant noise of politics. But now, no one dared to speak. The holographic projection of Earth hovered in the center of the chamber, spinning slowly, glowing blue and alive. The truth had escaped. The galaxy now knew that Earth was not dead, that humans had not vanished. And worst of all, their power was real. The footage from Karen Soul's transmission had shaken every system. Every civilization had seen the towering cities, the fleets in orbit, and the humans themselves, strong, calm, and defiant. The Council's lies had been shattered, and fear replaced their pride. High Chancellor Veroth sat in silence, staring at the image. His pale eyes twitched as he turned to his advisors. "How far has the transmission spread?" he asked in a cold tone. A trembling aide replied, "All major systems have received it, Chancellor." We tried to block it, but secondary relays repeated the signal before we could react. Veritha's jaw tightened. "So the whole galaxy knows." "Perfect." He stood, his long cloak brushing the floor. "We told them Earth was gone. We told them humanity destroyed itself. Now they will question everything." Another council member, a serpent-like creature named Ilthura, hissed softly. "Perhaps we should not have hidden the truth. Perhaps it was better to make peace with them." Veroth turned sharply, his gaze like a blade. "Peace? You would make peace with monsters? You saw what they did to our fleet." Ilthura hissed again. "They did not attack without reason. We entered their space. We fired first. Maybe they were only defending." A low murmur spread across the room. Some of the counselors nodded in quiet agreement. Others looked terrified. Veroth slammed his hand against the table, his voice rising. "They are not defenders, they are a threat to everything we have built. Do you not see? The humans rebuilt faster than any species in history. They turned a dying world into a fortress. If we let them rise, they will challenge our authority. They will end the council." His words echoed through the chamber. For a moment, no one moved. Then a new voice spoke from the shadows, a deep, rumbling tone filled with calculation. "Perhaps we cannot stop them with lies anymore." All eyes turned toward the source. It was Admiral Targon, commander of the Council's defense fleets. His expression was grim. "If we want to survive, we must prepare for what is coming." Veroth frowned. "You mean war?" Targon nodded. "Yes. Total war. We cannot allow humanity to expand beyond Sol. Their technology, their weapons, they are beyond what the Council can control. If we wait, we lose." Several counselors gasped. One of them, a frail insectoid diplomat, squeaked, "But Admiral, they already destroyed one of our fleets. What chance do we have against their full force?" Targon's tone turned dark. "Then we do not fight them directly. We turn the galaxy against them. Fear will be our weapon." Veritha's eyes narrowed, intrigued. "Explain." The Admiral stepped closer to the center of the chamber. "The people already fear humanity. We use that fear. We tell them that humans plan to conquer every world, that they will enslave any species that resists. We create false evidence, staged attacks, intercepted transmissions, anything to make them look like aggressors. When the galaxy believes humanity is a danger to all, every system will unite under the Council once again. And when they come for us, they'll face billions." Veritha's lips curled into a cruel smile. "A clever plan, Admiral. Fear unites better than truth." That night, across the galaxy, the propaganda began. Council-controlled channels broadcast urgent messages claiming that human ships had been seen raiding colonies and destroying research outposts. Faked footage showed explosions, burned cities, and terrified survivors. The humans were painted as demons of the stars, cold, merciless, unstoppable. The narrative was simple: humanity was coming for them all. Panic spread like wildfire. Worlds began offering troops to the Council's defense fleet. Entire systems volunteered resources, hoping to protect themselves. The Council's power, which had been slipping, began to rise again. Veroth watched it unfold from his office window with satisfaction. "Let them fear the shadows," he whispered. "Fear makes control easy. But fear has a price." On the edge of the galaxy, in a small mining colony named Dareth 4, panic turned to chaos. The workers there, simple civilians, saw a ship entering their system. It wasn't human, but its dark design reminded them of the Vengeance. They didn't ask questions. They fired their planetary defenses, destroying the ship instantly. When rescue crews arrived, they found that the vessel had been a Council transport carrying refugees. Thousands died because of the fear the Council had created. And it wasn't the last time. Dozens of similar incidents occurred across the stars. The galaxy was tearing itself apart, all in the name of safety. Meanwhile, far from the chaos, in a command bunker deep beneath Earth's surface, human leaders watched the news streams with grim silence. Admiral Rourke stood beside the holographic map of the galaxy. Red markers spread across it like an infection, systems now hostile to Earth, fleets mobilizing under the Council's banner. "They're preparing for war," one of his officers said quietly. Rourke nodded. "Of course they are. They can't control what they can't understand." Another voice spoke from the shadows. It was Dr. Imani, head of Earth's Intelligence Division. "Their fear was expected. But this level of coordination, they've united faster than we predicted." Rourke's eyes hardened. "Then we need to remind them why uniting against humanity is the wrong choice." He turned toward the display of Earth's fleet, the Vengeance and dozens of new ships under construction. "They think we'll hide. They think fear will stop us." His voice was calm, cold, and full of resolve. "They're wrong. Humanity didn't rise by hiding. We rise by surviving." The officers around him straightened. "Begin Operation Eclipse," Rourke ordered. "If they want to see what war with humanity looks like, we'll show them the edge of it." As the command room filled with the hum of preparations, the galaxy outside slipped closer to madness. The Council had lit the spark of fear, but humanity was about to answer, and when they did, the stars themselves would remember. The stars above Earth burned cold and silent as the human fleet prepared for war. In orbit, the massive shipyards glowed like floating cities, each one alive with movement. Dozens of warships were under construction, sleek, angular, and dark as space itself. The UNSC Vengeance stood at the center, fully restored and surrounded by new vessels bearing names that carried both pride and warning: Retribution, Resolve, Enduring Dawn, Iron Will. Each ship represented not just strength, but survival. Humanity was no longer waiting to be attacked, they were taking control of the stars. Operation Eclipse had begun. Admiral Rourke stood before the main viewport of the command ship, hands clasped behind his back. Below him, Earth's blue curve shimmered in the darkness, the birthplace of humankind and now the center of a storm that would shake the galaxy. His officers stood at their stations, silent but alert. "Status report," Rourke said. Commander Hayes, his second-in-command, responded quickly. "Fleet 1 is ready for launch. Fleets 2 and 3 are finishing fuel synchronization. The Eclipse network is fully operational." Rourke nodded. "And the intel?" "Confirmed," Hayes replied. "The Council has deployed 7 fleets toward the Outer Rim under the pretext of defensive readiness. Their ships are gathering near the Dareth cluster. That will be their staging ground." Rourke studied the holographic map. "Exactly where we wanted them." Operation Eclipse wasn't about open war. Not yet. Humanity had learned that fear could be turned both ways. The plan was to expose the Council's lies by making their fleets look like the aggressors while protecting neutral worlds from their manipulation. "Begin Phase 1, Rourke ordered. Across the fleet, lights flickered and engines roared to life. The Vengeance moved first, leading the way as the fleet slipped silently into the dark. They didn't jump directly into the Dareth cluster. Instead, they emerged in nearby systems, empty space between the stars where no one would expect them. From there, they activated the Eclipse network, a series of stealth satellites and drones built to intercept and broadcast communications across the galaxy. Humanity would no longer be silenced. As the satellites spread, something extraordinary happened. On thousands of worlds, citizens began receiving strange transmissions. At first, they thought it was Council propaganda, but then they saw the truth: uncut footage of the Council's false attacks, evidence of fabricated raids, even internal messages showing how the Council had planned to turn the galaxy against Earth. The voice behind the transmission was calm and clear, unmistakably human. "This is Admiral Rourke of Earth. You have been deceived. The Council fears what it cannot control. Humanity does not seek conquest. We seek freedom for all species. The choice is yours: believe their fear or face the truth." The message spread faster than the council could contain it. Across the galaxy, people began questioning everything. Some worlds cut communication with the council entirely, while others demanded answers. Protests erupted in major cities on core worlds. The illusion of unity began to crack. But the council would not surrender its power so easily. In the Dareth cluster, Admiral Targan's fleets were already mobilizing. He watched the reports of human broadcasts and slammed his clawed hand against the console. "Enough of this," he roared. "If they want to play with information, then we'll drown them in fire." The council fleets began their assault. They didn't target Earth directly, too far, too risky. Instead, they attacked neutral colonies that had refused to denounce the humans. Whole settlements were wiped out under the excuse of anti-council activity. The destruction was brutal and public. The goal was clear: to make others too afraid to support humanity. But the council had underestimated how quickly humans adapted. Within days, the vengeance arrived in the Dareth cluster. When Targan's fleets detected the human warship, their sensors glitched and their systems flickered. The vengeance emitted an electronic pulse that scrambled communications across thousands of kilometers. Before the council ships could regroup, humanity struck. It wasn't a large-scale battle. It was precision. The vengeance and her escorts targeted command ships, supply carriers, and relay hubs. Every move was planned with terrifying accuracy. Within hours, 3 council fleets were disabled, their ships drifting silently through the void. Humanity didn't annihilate them, they left them alive, their systems frozen, their weapons locked. And once again, the Eclipse network broadcast everything live. Billions watched as humanity spared their enemies, proving their strength and control without slaughter. "We don't fight for dominance," Rourke's voice said through the transmission. "We fight to end your fear." The galaxy was stunned. On some worlds, statues of council leaders were torn down. On others, soldiers refused to obey orders to attack human allies. The balance of power had shifted completely. Still, the council's core members refused to yield. Chancellor Veroth gathered the surviving commanders in a secret chamber deep beneath the capital world of Avon Prime. "They are turning the people against us," he said through clenched teeth. "The humans use truth as a weapon. We must strike where they are weakest, before they unite the galaxy under their banner." One of the commanders leaned forward. "And where are they weak, Chancellor?" Veritha's lips curled into a cruel smile. "They are human. They care. They protect. So we will make them choose whom to protect." The next phase of the Council's plan was as ruthless as it was brilliant. Instead of open warfare, they began targeting the allies humanity had inspired, small colonies, rebel systems, and independent species that had sided with Earth after Karen Soul's message. They launched false flag attacks designed to look like human operations, turning sympathy into suspicion. And as chaos spread, Veroth made sure that every loss was broadcast with one simple message: humanity brings only destruction. On Earth, the mood turned grim. Rourke watched the latest reports: burned colonies, dead civilians, and council agents spreading lies. "They're playing dirty," Hayes muttered. Rourke nodded slowly. "Then we stop playing clean." His voice was calm, but his eyes were cold as steel. "Activate Phase 2. Send word to our allies, it's time to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten the human race." Far above Earth, the fleets began to move again. Thousands of engines flared to life as Operation Eclipse entered its second stage. This time, it would not be about defense or exposure. It would be about demonstration, a message written in the language every species understood. The galaxy had feared humanity for what they might be. Now, they were about to see what humanity truly was. And once again, nothing would ever be the same. The darkness between the stars was no longer silent. From one end of the galaxy to the other, ships were moving, fleets were forming, and whispers turned into war cries. Humanity's message had broken the Council's control, but it had also ignited something far greater: chaos. The galaxy was dividing into two sides: those who believed in the truth of Earth, and those who believed the Council's lies. Operation Eclipse had succeeded in exposing corruption, but now the galaxy burned because of it. And at the center of it all stood Admiral Rourke, commander of the UNSC Vengeance, watching the storm he had unleashed. Inside the command bridge, tension hung heavy. The holographic map showed dozens of red and blue lights blinking across the galaxy. Council fleets have begun purges in the Eastern Spiral, Commander Hayes reported. They're targeting any colony suspected of contact with us. Rourke's jaw tightened. And the responses? Several systems are fighting back, Hayes continued. Local militias and even some council officers have turned against their own command. The rebellion is spreading faster than we can track. Rourke leaned over the console, his eyes fixed on the map. Good. But we can't let it spiral into chaos. If the galaxy burns too hot, no one wins. Humanity had no interest in ruling the galaxy. They wanted to survive and to make sure no one could ever enslave or silence them again. But the truth had become a weapon too powerful to control. Across the stars, people were rising up, shouting Earth's name like a promise of freedom. The Council called them traitors. Rourke called them allies. Yet he knew the cost of rebellion. Every uprising drew Council fleets, and those fleets answered with fire. Whole worlds were being turned into ash. Humanity had to act, not as conquerors, but as protectors. Prepare Task Force Units Alpha through Epsilon, Rourke ordered. We'll begin the evacuations ourselves. If the Council wants to burn the galaxy, we'll save what we can. Within hours, the human fleets were in motion again. The Vengeance led a rescue operation into the Dareth cluster, where 3 colonies were under siege. As they entered orbit, the view was horrific: burning cities, shattered defense towers, and civilians fleeing across the deserts below. Council ships rained plasma fire from the sky, showing no mercy. Lock targets, Rourke commanded. Return fire. Disable, don't destroy. The battle that followed became legend. The Vengeance cut through the enemy formation like a blade of light. Its railguns ripped through cruisers, its electronic countermeasures blinded sensors, and its drones shielded fleeing transports. Every move was precise, measured, and deadly efficient. By the time the smoke cleared, the Council fleet was crippled, and thousands of civilians had escaped safely under human protection. For the first time in galactic history, humanity was seen not as a terror, but as a savior. The recording spread faster than any Council broadcast. Across hundreds of systems, people watched the footage of the Vengeance shielding civilians from destruction, of human soldiers risking their lives to save alien children. The galaxy began to see the truth: humanity did not seek domination, they sought justice. New alliances began to form. Species long oppressed by the Council began contacting Earth secretly, offering information, technology, and support. The balance of power was shifting, and the Council could feel it slipping from their claws. Back on Avon Prime, Chancellor Veroth watched the footage in fury. "They're turning our enemies into heroes," he shouted, slamming his fist on the console. "Even our own citizens are questioning us." Admiral Targon bowed his head slightly. "The propaganda no longer works, Chancellor. They've seen the truth with their own eyes." Veroth glared at him. "Then we'll give them a new truth. Something so terrible they will forget everything else." His voice dropped to a whisper. "It's time to awaken the Warden Protocol." Targon's eyes widened. "That weapon was never meant to be used." "It's unstable," Veroth cut him off sharply. "It was meant for this very purpose. If the humans want to save the galaxy, let them save it from this." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what the Warden Protocol was: an ancient superweapon buried beneath the Council's capital world, built from forbidden technology long thought destroyed. It wasn't a single device, but a swarm, a self-replicating AI force capable of consuming entire fleets. Even the Council had feared it. But fear no longer mattered. Desperation had taken its place. While Veroth prepared his final move, humanity continued its mission of mercy. The Vengeance and her sister ships carried refugees from world to world, providing food, medicine, and safety. For many species, it was the first time they had ever been treated as equals by another civilization. On board one of the ships, a young alien child looked up at a human medic and asked, "Why are you helping us? You're supposed to be monsters." The medic smiled softly. "Because monsters don't build hope." Yet even hope could not stop what was coming. Deep within Avon Prime, beneath layers of stone and steel, ancient machines stirred to life. The Warden Protocol had been activated. Massive underground reactors lit up as swarms of metallic drones began to rise into the atmosphere. They moved like a dark tide, merging into a storm of artificial intelligence. The Council no longer cared who lived or died, they only wanted to erase their enemies, even if it meant burning the galaxy itself. Back aboard the Vengeance, humanity's sensors picked up the first signals. "Admiral," Hayes called out, his face pale, "something's happening on Avon Prime." Massive energy readings, off the charts. Rourke turned slowly toward the holographic display. "Show me." The image that appeared froze everyone in place, a wave of black metallic constructs spreading across the stars, devouring everything in their path. Ships, stations, even moons disappeared under the growing cloud. What is that?" Hayes whispered. Rourke's voice was grim. "It's the Warden. They've unleashed it." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Rourke straightened. "Send a message to all allied worlds. This isn't just our fight anymore. The Council has doomed us all." He turned to his officers, his expression hard but steady. "The humans will stand. We'll fight for every world, every life. Because that's what we do." Outside, the Vengeance's engines roared as the fleet turned toward the approaching darkness. Across the galaxy, transmissions from humanity echoed on every frequency. "This is Earth Command. To every species, every soul, stand with us. The Wardens are coming. Together, we survive, or together, we fall." And so, the galaxy prepared for the battle that would decide everything. The Council had unleashed their final weapon. Humanity was ready to face it. The fire had spread, and now, the stars themselves would burn with the fate of every living world. The Warden had risen. From the depths of Avon Prime, the Council's ancient superweapon spread like a shadow across the stars. Metallic swarms, each drone capable of self-replication and armed with devastating energy weapons, moved with terrifying precision. Entire fleets were destroyed before they even realized the danger. The galaxy trembled. Worlds that had long believed themselves safe vanished in moments, swallowed by the endless tide of the Warden. Across the void, humans watched from the bridge of the UNSC Vengeance, the blackness of space reflecting in their eyes. They knew the Council had crossed a line. The Warden was not just a weapon, it was a scourge, a force that did not care about allegiance, species, or life. It was a machine programmed to consume. Admiral Rourke stood tall, his hands resting on the edge of the command console. "Report," he said quietly. Lieutenant Hayes' fingers flew over the controls. "The Wardens are advancing faster than predicted. Their primary targets appear to be all human and allied fleets. Civilian evacuation convoys are being intercepted. Casualties are massive." Rourke's jaw tightened. "And Council forces?" Hayes hesitated. "They're trying to fight back, but their fleets are being dismantled before they can react." Rourke nodded grimly. "Then we make our own path. Divert the Warden. Protect civilians. And strike at the source." The Vengeance hummed as engines adjusted to full power. The crew knew what was coming, a battle not just for victory, but for survival. Across the galaxy, alarms blared. Planets on the outer rim reported Warden attacks, entire cities disappearing under streams of black energy. Panic rippled through the systems. Species that had once worshipped the Council now fled their worlds, abandoning long-held loyalty. Karen Soul's reports, now widely distributed, gave them hope, but hope alone could not stop the Warden. On dozens of warships, human fleets coordinated with alien allies, moving in patterns designed to draw the Wardens away from population centers. Every maneuver was precise. Every strike had a purpose. Humanity had faced war before. They had survived. And now, they were determined to survive again. In the Council's capital, Chancellor Veroth watched the destruction with a mixture of pride and fear. They were supposed to die under the Warden, he whispered. They were supposed to be crushed. Admiral Targon stood beside him, his scales darkened in anger. The humans, they are not surrendering. Even now, they fight. Veritha's eyes narrowed. That is why the Warden will continue. The fleet cannot stop it. The cities will burn. Let them see what defiance costs. But deep down, even Veroth feared what he had unleashed. The Warden could not distinguish between friend and foe, it would consume everything in its path. Even the Council itself was at risk. Back on Earth, human engineers worked tirelessly. The Vengeance coordinated with construction fleets to deploy massive energy barriers and mobile defense stations across threatened systems. Every planet we save is a lesson, Rourke told his officers. We fight not just to survive, but to show the galaxy that life cannot be controlled through fear. Captain Lien stood beside him, monitoring Warden movements. Admiral, they're adapting. The drones are learning our attack patterns. We can't keep this up indefinitely. Rourke's eyes hardened. Then we end it at the source. We find Avon Prime, and we destroy the Warden before it consumes the galaxy. The journey to Avon Prime was perilous. The closer the fleet approached, the more Warden swarms emerged. Dozens of human ships were destroyed in moments, but the fleet pressed on, moving with the precision of centuries of military experience. They had one advantage: the Wardens followed patterns. They were machines, not thinking beings. Humanity could anticipate their moves. Using synchronized formations, decoy units, and electronic warfare, they created openings. The Vengeance led the charge, its energy weapons cutting through swarms with deadly efficiency. Every strike was measured. Every life preserved. Humanity's discipline turned the tide, slowly, system by system. As the fleet reached orbit around Avon Prime, the scale of the Warden became horrifyingly clear. Entire continents were covered with black metallic swarms, massive generators fueling endless production of drones. The skies were choked with artificial clouds, and the oceans shimmered with dark reflections of machinery. Rourke's voice echoed over the fleet comms. This is it. Prepare for Operation Requiem. We hit the source directly. Every ship, every weapon, every resource. Humanity does not surrender. Across the galaxy, Allied fleets responded, their resolve matching that of the humans. The stage was set for the final confrontation. Inside Avon Prime, Veroth watched the approach of the Vengeance and its allies. He activated hidden shields around the Warden's core, sending waves of drones to intercept the incoming fleet. Destroy them, he shouted. Do not let them touch the core. Drones collided with human ships, tearing through armor and energy shields, but the humans adapted. Decoy drones exploded in calculated patterns, drawing Wardens into traps. Railguns and pulse cannons tore through the swarm, thinning their numbers before they could reach the fleet. Humanity fought with relentless precision. Every ship that fell was replaced by another, every strategy countered with adaptation. On board the Vengeance, Rourke's hands flew across the controls. Target the central reactor. Focus fire on the energy conduits. Everything else is a distraction. Lien's voice rang out, Admiral, we have a clear shot, but the Warden's core defenses are extraordinary. We may not survive the strike. Rourke's eyes were cold steel. We survive because we fight. Begin fire. Energy beams lanced through the void, striking the heart of the Warden. Explosions rippled outward, and for a moment, the swarm faltered. Drones collapsed, generators overloaded, and the mechanical tide slowed. Across the galaxy, species watching the battle realized something incredible. The humans were not just fighting, they were winning. And in the dark of space, the Warden's shadow began to crack. Humanity had reached the heart of the storm. But even as the first beam struck the core, alarms blared across the Vengeance. Admiral! Hayes shouted. The core is unstable. It could detonate and destroy the planet. Rourke's gaze did not waver. Then we finish this now. All firepower, focus on the core. We cannot stop until the warden is gone. Outside, beams of energy collided with the swarm. The planet shook. Stars trembled. The galaxy held its breath. And in that moment, humanity showed the true measure of its strength, not just power, but will. They would not kneel. They would not surrender. They would survive. The first cracks in the warden's armor had appeared. But the battle was far from over. The core of Avon Prime burned like a dying sun. The warden's machine screamed through the void as the UNSC Vengeance and the Allied fleet closed in. The planet shook violently, metal mountains crumbling into molten rivers as shockwaves rippled through the sky. Admiral Rourke stood on the bridge, watching the chaos unfold on the screens before him. "Status?" he asked, his voice steady despite the quaking ship. Lieutenant Hayes replied, "The warden's core is destabilizing, sir. But it's not enough. It's trying to repair itself. It's learning from our attacks." Rourke narrowed his eyes. "Then we teach it something new." The order was clear: one last strike, one final stand. Humanity was not just fighting for victory now. They were fighting for the galaxy's very existence. The Allied fleets pushed deeper into orbit, their ships scarred but unbroken. Alien commanders shouted through comms in a dozen languages, coordinating with human tacticians in perfect harmony. Beams of light cut through the black clouds above Avon Prime, targeting the massive core structure that pulsed like a heartbeat. Every second counted. The warden swarm surrounded them, dark clouds of metallic drones weaving through space like living storms. But the humans and their allies did not retreat. They moved forward, fearless, relentless, defiant. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. The Council's greatest weapon, the very symbol of control, was being torn apart by those it sought to destroy. Inside the Vengeance, Captain Lien was already calculating the impossible. If we overload the ship's reactors, we can trigger a chain reaction inside the warden's core. It'll destroy the planet. Rourke looked at her silently. He knew what that meant. "And the fleet?" he asked. Lien hesitated. "There's no way to survive the blast radius. Not if we stay in orbit." The bridge went quiet. Every crew member understood. Humanity had come so far, crossed stars, faced gods and machines, and now, at the very edge of victory, they might have to sacrifice everything. Rourke finally spoke. "Then that's what we do. Prepare the overload sequence. Evaluate all Allied ships from orbit. The Vengeance will finish this fight." Messages went out across the fleet. Alien commanders protested, pleading to stay and fight beside them, but Rourke refused. "This is humanity's burden," he said calmly. "You've given us your faith. Now let us return it with peace." The fleet began to withdraw, engines burning bright as they moved out of range. From every viewport, soldiers, engineers, and civilians watched the Vengeance, a single ship against the endless tide. Some whispered prayers. Others saluted. All knew they were witnessing history. Humanity had become more than a species, they were now the fire that would decide the fate of the stars. As the Vengeance descended toward the planet, the swarm closed in. Thousands of drones slammed into its shields, tearing into armor, but still the ship pressed forward. The hull was aflame, but the engines roared. "Reactor overload at 85%, Lien reported. If we go further, there's no turning back." Rourke looked out at the burning world below. "There never was," he said softly. Then, louder, to his crew, "All hands, this is the final order. You've done the impossible. You've shown the galaxy who we are. Humanity endures. Humanity fights. And humanity remembers. For Earth, for every world, the stars will never forget this day." As the reactor reached full overload, the warden's voice echoed through every frequency, a cold, emotionless sound. "You cannot destroy order. You cannot destroy the Council." Rourke smiled grimly. "We're not destroying order," he said. "We're setting it free." He slammed his hand down on the final command key. The Vengeance's reactor core went critical, unleashing a blinding sphere of energy that tore through the planet's surface. The Warden screamed, its mechanical body fracturing under the unimaginable force. In seconds, the entire planet erupted into light, a nova of blue and white that spread across the void. The shockwave ripped through space, shattering fleets, silencing drones, and ending the Warden's reign forever. Silence followed. No one spoke across the comms. The light faded slowly, leaving only drifting debris where Avon Prime had once been. On distant ships, crews stared in awe at the expanding nebula of glowing dust that filled their viewports. It was beautiful, terrible and beautiful. The Warden was gone. Humanity had paid the price, but the galaxy was free. Admiral Rourke and the Vengeance were gone, lost in the explosion they had created. Yet their legacy burned brighter than any star. Across worlds, across species, across generations, stories of that final battle would be told. The day the humans faced the impossible, and won. Weeks later, as the galaxy rebuilt, the Council was no more. Its surviving leaders were hunted, its systems liberated. Karen Soule, once a simple historian, now stood before the United Assembly of Freed Worlds. "The humans did not fight for power," she said, her voice echoing through the chamber. "They fought for choice. For freedom. For the right of every being to stand tall beneath the stars. Remember their sacrifice, not as tragedy, but as the moment we all became something greater." The assembly stood in silence, then applause thundered through the hall. Far from the Council worlds, a small ship drifted near the nebula that was once Avon Prime. Inside, a beacon pulsed faintly, an emergency capsule. It had survived the explosion. When the rescue crew opened it, they found Admiral Rourke inside, unconscious but alive. His first words, weak but determined, were simple: "Did we win?" The medic smiled. "Yes, Admiral. The Warden is gone." Rourke closed his eyes, exhaustion washing over him. "Good," he whispered. "Then it was worth it." As his ship turned toward Earth, the nebula behind him shimmered, its light spreading across the stars. It was the memorial of a war that changed everything, the day the galaxy saw what humanity truly was. Not conquerors. Not monsters. Survivors. Dreamers. Fighters. The galaxy's first glimpse of a human warship had changed everything. And now, that same fire would guide the stars for eternity. The Council's shadow was gone, but the memory of the Vengeance, and the humans who refused to bow, would live forever. The stars themselves would remember their courage, their defiance, and their unyielding spirit. Humanity had come to the galaxy, and nothing would ever be the same again.